Little geography quiz for you on the wall there. Hopefully you're seeing this. Where is this?
Utah.
Closer to you.
Oh, the window.
City of Rocks. Excelente. Yep, you guys are right. So I love your part of the world. I'm Joseph Kursky. I'm just north of you, actually pretty close to the same line of longitude, 105 degrees-ish west. I'm up in Denver. I would rather have been with you in person because I do love your part of the world. I'm from western Colorado, so, you know, buttes, mesas, piñons, junipers, cholla. I mean, that's kind of that's my home terrain. So I love the part of the world where you are, and I love the vision that you folks have for incorporating this in the classroom. I think, as one of you said, it's going to be fun, it's going to be interesting, and I want you to know that you're in a sort of a very special place. You've got a lot of support from fellow teachers, from these administrators that you've got all around you, and I just wanted to say that I am fully supportive of your vision here. I used to work at the, I've got a pencil here, the U.S. Geological Survey, and I worked at the Census Bureau and at NOAA. So most of my career is actually in federal agencies creating the kind of geospatial data that we'll be working with today. And I'm on the education outreach team at ESRI. As Dr. M said, that's the organization that creates the tools that we're going to use. And so our team is totally focused on education. So helping you all be successful with this in the classroom. That is our sole goal, okay? So again, I salute you. I also teach at the University of Denver up here in Colorado, but more later. And again, thanks for Michael and Dr. Samogo and Dr. Mabako, Ms. Stevens, and others for their support and bringing this all together. All right, folks. Buena suerte. We're going to have a great time.
Okay, thanks, Dr. K. As you can see, folks.
Greetings. Why in these videos do I spend so much time demonstrating and talking about investigating the planet using live web maps? Well, I'll tell you a couple reasons why. First of all, these live web maps are like the planet. They're living, they're dynamic. They allow us to ask questions and investigate the planet. They let us look at features and phenomenon and issues from local to global scale, all the way from land use change in your local community to regional health patterns to global climate to Earth-Sun relationships. They really allow us to look at a lot of different scales in a short amount of space with really easy to use tools nowadays. If you've got a spreadsheet, for example, with some latitude, longitude values or some addresses that you're trying to geocode and put it on a map, no problem, easy to do. Now, another reason why I think dynamic web mapping is so valuable to a lot of different disciplines, human health, geography, STEM education, biology, etc., is because they can be shared, and we can investigate these issues, we can ask questions, and then we can share these maps with our colleagues, and they can look at what we've done and they can add to it. We can have a dialogue about the problems and issues. So it's no longer me working on my own computer in my own little web mapping world and you working on your computer somewhere else. We can actually collaborate by sharing these maps. And also, what these maps allow us to do is ask better questions. That's what cartographer Charlie Fry is always talking about. A good map allows us to ask a better question. And so also we can ask some really good questions with these dynamic web maps. And also they allow us to really investigate the quality of data that goes into it, not just because it's on the internet, therefore it's perfect, or just because it's a web map, that means it's perfect. No, that's not it at all. It allows us to be critical of data. Who made that map? What kind of data did they use? How often was it updated? What scale were the data collected at? And all that kind of stuff. Especially nowadays, now that anybody can make a web map. You can make one in your garage, right? So it's important to ask those critical questions, not just about the problems that you're trying to solve, but about the data that goes in, right? Because your analysis is highly dependent on the maps and the data that you're inputting to ask and solve those problems. So there's a lot of key reasons to look at the Earth using these dynamic web maps. You can map things that you collect yourself, and you can also map things that other people have collected. So these are just a few of the many reasons why I think web maps, dynamic web maps, for example, in an ArcGIS Online environment, is a very compelling and useful framework for solving problems. Thanks.
Right. Now we are back with you. Please go ahead. Can you see the room? Can you see us in the room?
Yes, hi. Good to see all your bright, shining faces, folks. Sorry about the little technical difficulties, but it wouldn't be a real computer-based workshop if we didn't have some sort of challenges, right? But what we wanted to do here in this next few moments is just to kind of give you a framework. Thanks for watching that video. It kind of summarizes some of the main things that we feel that are important here. So just for a couple of things here to reinforce what I said in that video, our goals today, we're going to develop some knowledge and skills in using geotechnologies, but also with your teacher hats on, develop your teaching skills. So when you get out at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I have some skills that I can use, and I'm also, in number 3, confident that I can move forward. Now that being said, there is an element that it is a journey, okay? I don't mean the 80s band Journey. Maybe some of you remember that band Journey, but I don't mean that journey. I mean, this is a journey in geotechnologies. Now, what are geotechnologies? Back in 2004, the US Department of Labor said, hey, there's 3 hot growing fields for the 21st century that we need to be paying attention to. Nanotechnologies, biotechnologies, and geotechnologies. So the geotechnologies is what we're going to focus on today. And that includes web mapping or geographic information systems, remote sensing, looking at the world from space, GPS or global positioning systems, and all of the related technologies and data that are associated with those things. So it's geo, looking at the Earth, and technology. So really, I put these themes on here because I wanted to get you thinking about the bigger picture for a moment, that yes, we think that this is really valuable in education, but beyond education, this is really a valuable thing for society. Because when you think about some of the issues on our planet, what issues come to mind, folks? What are some issues that we face?
Pollution, global warming.
Air, water, soil pollution. Okay, what else?
Global warming.
Climate change, global warming. Okay.
We are going to turn on our mic back, Dr. K.
No worries, no worries. I mean, you're thinking about some of these issues, right? From local to global scale. Any others come to mind?
Migration.
Okay, and you're living and breathing that right there, aren't you? I mean, the part of the world that you're in right now. Okay.
Overpopulation.
Okay, so population growth, change, demographics, migration, yeah, all that human element, human geography.
Drought.
Okay, so yeah, I'm from Colorado. You guys are dealing with it in New Mexico and Texas too. You've got either too much water or too little water. You've got wildfires. You've got other natural hazards that are associated with the lack of water oftentimes. So anyway, the point is water, energy, natural hazards, biodiversity loss, acidification in the ocean, climate, weather, all of these have a where component, right? Donde. They all have a where component. And so we can analyze those and make smarter decisions about the planet using these geotechnologies. So Dr. M and others there in the room truly believe that students that are using this in your classrooms are going to be better decision makers, right? They're going to be at the New Mexico DNR someday, the Department of Natural Resources, or in your city planning office, or somewhere where they're making decisions about the land and its people, and they're going to have some better critical thinking and spatial thinking skills from you using this in the classroom. So we really do believe that it goes beyond the educational walls for all these reasons that I've got up here. So yeah, thanks for embarking on the journey here with us. Another thing that I wanted to mention here ever so briefly is that during the workshop, things to think about. First of all, let me just share a little personal story. I was in a community college not too long ago, and it was a criminal justice course. So I brought out my lesson on, okay, let's analyze crime, and my lesson was on Lincoln, Nebraska. Kind of shattered my image of, ideal Midwestern community. Anyway, because of the amount of crime there. So we were looking at Lincoln, and we were looking at, you know, police districts and where the crimes happened and how we can use GIS. And the students kind of thought, okay, I thought we were going to learn GIS today. And I said, well, I don't want to burst your bubble, but it is a journey, and it's kind of like chemistry or mathematics. And I know we've got some language arts teachers in there. You're not going to learn everything about biology or mathematics in one classroom, right? Or in one day session like you are in today. So just kind of give yourself a little time to kind of dip your toe into the shallow end of the pool, and then you kind of keep moving on. And it's kind of like Dr. Zamago talked about at the beginning. It is a progress, and we hope that after this workshop, you do one thing that we learned in the workshop sometime in the next few days, because, you know, you and I have been in these workshops before, right? If you don't touch it for the next, you know, 3 months because, you know, life and work just happen, I've been there and I understand, but you'll get to March or something, you'll say, what did we do with Dr. M and Dr. K and these other good people back in December? I don't remember. So sometime soon, ideally in the next few days, do one thing that we learned today and just kind of keep moving forward. And also, you've got a good network of people, the successful people that use this in the classroom. And we'll talk about the fact that you're not alone. There are other people doing this, that these people are all very much in the way of, oh, let me share with you what I learned. So it's a good community to be in. So you've got a good local group there, and you've also got a national and even an international community using this in the classroom. Finally, folks, if you're still there and not running screaming from the room already, everybody with me? Okay, finally, if for each lesson, we're gonna just kind of dip a little bit into it. And the idea is you'll have more to do after the workshop. So we're not gonna complete, like we're going to go through a time zone lesson. And we're just gonna touch on just a couple of points, realizing that any one of these lessons could occupy our whole day, but we wanted to give, you know, something for everyone. We've got a nice diversity of people in the workshop today. I mean, we've got the math and the science and the language arts and, oh my gosh, the graphic arts teachers. I mean, it's just great. And we've got kindergarten through high school. So, you know, we're hoping that from this diversity of people that you have there and the diversity of subjects, we'll be able to have something say, okay, I can do that in the classroom. And I do think, though, that all being said, that frankly, folks, it's easier just to hand out a bunch of static worksheets. It just is. So I'm not going to say that using geographic information systems is easy. That's exactly why we have a workshop like this. I really salute all of you for wanting to embark on a real world tool. And that's the challenge that you have as educators. You're taking a professional software and tools and data, and you're using it in the classroom rather than educational software. You know what I mean? This is not educational software, but we're using it in education. I think there are challenges to that. There's also benefits because the students are using the real stuff that Doña Ana County uses, that New Mexico DNR uses, that the United Nations Environment Program uses, that the Center for Disease Control uses. See what I mean? They're using the same tools. So that means for you as an educator, you have to grapple with, okay, how do I do this in the classroom? And we'll give you help along the way, okay? But it's a meaningful use of technology. You're not just using it because it's there or because it's a good job skill for students, etc. It's actually a meaningful kind of an integration of technology. So hopefully you'll see that in the workshop today. We're going to be primarily using something called ArcGIS Online. And one note that I think would be very interesting to a lot of you is that ArcGIS Online can actually be customized for different languages. So you can actually customize the interface for ArcGIS Online for Espanol, which would be very cool, I think, for a lot of you and your students. All right, so we'll get rolling here with the first activity. First of all, any questions? Does anybody need to pause and breathe?
I think they're good to go.
You folks are very patient and very wonderful. I wish I could be there in person. If it's too clunky to have me remotely like this, just give a holler. I mean, Dr. M and the other good folks there, they can do this better than I can. I just love being a part of these things, so thanks for having me. But if it gets too clunky, just let me know, okay? So go back to your outline, your document that you've got with all those links, because we're going to be referring to that numerous times today. It's that document that has, you know, all the agenda for today, okay? And so we've gone through all of the 1 through 5s in your document. If you could scroll down to number 6, it's the practical exercise number 1. Does everybody see that? Cool. So let's go ahead and use 3 web applications, web mapping applications, and 2 of them are really easy to use. The third one involves a lesson, and it's also pretty straightforward, but it gets you into, okay, how do I teach with this? So let's pull up this story map on Thanksgiving. This is just one example of what we're talking about here. And if you pull that up, it's going to look like this. It might conjure up images of a couple weeks ago, but there are methods to our madness here. There's reasons why we decided to show you this one. So go scrolling down in your agenda to number 6, and then pull up that Thanksgiving story map.
Okay, I think they're good to go. That's okay.
All right, folks, this is an example of a web mapping application with the same kind of platform that you're going to be using today, ArcGIS Online from Esri. Okay, it's kind of a big mouthful of words, but this particular application is called a story map. And how many of you have ever seen a story map like this, where you've got different tabs and each tab has got a different map in it? Has anybody in the room there seen anything like this before?
Yes.
Okay. So story maps are, as you can see, multimedia web maps. And there are 2 ways to use them in the classroom. A, you can teach with them. So if you're teaching about the distribution of different crops, for example, with the Thanksgiving theme as we have on this one, you can go to green beans, as I've got scrolled to, and who knew Wisconsin had so many green bean gardens, right? You know, where do all the pumpkins come from? Where do all the sweet potatoes come from? You know, scroll down and see, where does New Mexico figure in pretty highly here? So you can see that these are dynamic maps. They're symbolized in compelling ways, in this case with larger circles for more of something, right? So bigger circles called a graduated symbol map, bigger circles for more of, in this case, I've got pumpkins up there. So we've got Central California, Illinois, the Corn Belt, etc., for being high for pumpkins. Also, there's a spot in sort of New Mexico-Texas border where they seem to be growing a lot of pumpkins east of Roswell for some reason, like Portales over there. So this is just one example of a story map. It's got tabs, as you can see, and each tab has a different theme. And now think outside the box. You could have a story map on global weather patterns, or droughts, or trade, GDP per capita, access to safe drinking water. And indeed, there are maps like that. But we just wanted to show you one, just to kind of get you thinking about 2 ways of using story maps in the classroom. One, you could teach with existing story maps. And we'll get into this when you actually design a story map later on. There's no shortage of story maps that are available for you to teach with on a variety of different topics, okay? But the second way you can use these in the classroom is that you can actually create your own. You can create your own on tsunamis or whatever you have the students actually working on, okay? Wow, population change in southern New Mexico. I mean, the sky's the limit, but you can, so either use them as existing or create your own, or have the students create their own. So there's really a multitude of ways that you can use these in the classroom. Now, another thing that I wanted to say about this workshop, if you do not like maps, this workshop is going to be kind of like torture, okay? It's going to be like you being dragged to some concert you really didn't want to go see some band, you know, but your friend dragged you and you're like, I really don't like that band, okay? So that's what it's going to be like. But hopefully you'll see that maps are kind of the common language that's drawing all of us together in the workshop. Now, one of the reasons why I love maps is because they sort of, sometimes they confirm our sort of preconceived idea of how the world works, and sometimes they shatter our idea of how the world works. They challenge our idea of how the world works. So here, you know, why do they grow so many pumpkins in Yoakum County, Texas, basically northeast of you guys? And then what is Doña Ana County? Okay, so you don't have as many pumpkins as east. So compare this. Why is that? And get the students thinking about, well, there's different ecoregions, there's different rainfall amounts in different parts of the country, and so on. And that's why you've got different crops growing in different areas, right? So pecans. Hey, you guys are right in pecan country, aren't you? I mean, look at this. You got 25,000 acres of pecans on 1,400 farms. Yeah, I love the pecans from southern New Mexico. So, yes.
Just a little question. I think someone wondering, you know, when you clicked on that dot and the information came up, how did you do that?
Yeah, so Dr. M is touching on one of the key things in a geographic information system, and that these graphics that you're seeing here, they're not just like dots floating in cyberspace. So a geographic information system has 3 parts in it. Just think of the letters. The G part is the map. It can be a map like this of crops. It could be a map of water wells or population or cities or ocean currents, etc. But that's the map part. It could be a 2D map or a 3D map. We'll get into that later on in the workshop. You can map things in 3D also. And then the I part is the information behind the map. Now, you all have used Excel in the past, right? So you've got to think of a spreadsheet of data. So we have a spreadsheet of data with data from the agricultural census. And from that spreadsheet, you can, or from any spreadsheet, you can make a map from it. So that's the I part. And then the S part of GIS brings the G, the map, and the I, the table, into the system, okay? So that's the beauty of this, is that you can actually analyze things by attribute or the tabular information or by the map itself. So that's where the data comes from. Now it touches on something I mentioned in that geeky video, and that is be critical of the data, right? Anybody can make a web map these days. Where did this data come from? So if I go to the intro, it says, oh, okay, the map data is from the USDA Census of Agriculture. And there's a link there in the intro tab that gets you more information about what the Census of Agriculture is. Now, is the Census of Agriculture perfect? Now, I used to work for the US Census Bureau, and as you folks probably know, there are people that are undercounted, there are people that are overcounted, there are some limitations and challenges in any data set. However, it's very useful information. It's not perfect, but it's useful. And in this case, we use the Census of Agriculture data to map the crops with a Thanksgiving theme, realizing that not everybody eats these kinds of foods on Thanksgiving, right? You may have non-traditional themes in your family. Maybe, hey, being from New Mexico, you eat some green chili, okay? So anyway, the point is that here is a map with data in it, but be critical of the data. Don't just say, well, because it's a map, therefore it's perfect. All right, so hopefully that's kind of intriguing. Looking at these pecan patterns, this is really fascinating. You've got southern New Mexico, and then you've got south central US, and then you've got Georgia, southeast or southwest Georgia, heavy on pecans. So you could say, well, is this a climate influence? Obviously, we're not growing any up here in Colorado with me, except for a couple counties. So is a rainfall? It has to have a certain number of hot days? You know, what is it about pecans? Yep, certain kind of soil. So these are the kinds of questions we want to ask about data. What are the patterns that exist, and why are those patterns the way they are? All right, so that's just one of many story maps that exist that we will explore later in this workshop. Any other questions, comments?
Oh, so far so good.
You folks are great. This pecans, that's fascinating. Has anybody in the room ever been to one of the pecan farms in Doña Ana County?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, cool. Well, maybe I need to come down there and hang out with you all and visit one of these. Very cool. Okay, let's go back to the outline for today. And we're still in number 6, but I'd like you to click on that next one, the Urban Observatory app. The Urban Observatory app.
Right. Sorry, Dr. King.
Yep.
To highlight something here. Maybe, I think our internet is doing good so far. It may be helpful if we close the old browsers that we're not using. So, like, once you're done with the Thanksgiving app, close it and then open the other link.
Yep, good idea. Yep, because there'll be lots of tabs that you're working in. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we go with the Urban Observatory app. Let's switch so that we are moving to the rest of the tip.
Yep, excellent. So the Urban Observatory, as you're pulling that up, as the pop-up box explains, it lets you compare between cities around the world. So the story map that we were looking at earlier, it is USA, right? It's from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Census, and it was foods grown for traditional Thanksgiving meals. Where are they grown? In this case, we've got a global data set. So once that box pops up, go ahead and click on Start Comparing in the red text there, Start Comparing. Once you do that, you will see this. You will see a triplicate set of cities, and each one of those is a dynamic web map, just like you were looking at with the crops. You'll be able to zoom and pan and look at different relationships and patterns on those maps. So the default that comes up, as you can see, is population density for New York, London, and Tokyo. Now again, being critical of data, where did this come from? Well, if we dig into what's called the metadata, M-E-T-A data, the information about the data, in this case about the map, this was created by ESRI President Jack Dangermond, so it was basically my boss's boss's boss, okay, and Richard Saul Wurman, W-U-R-M-A-N. Richard Saul Wurman was the original founder of the TED Talks. So if you're familiar with the TED Talks, which I'm sure all of you are, he was the one that founded TED. So Richard Saul Wurman and Jack Dangermond got together and said, hey, let's create this tool where people could compare different variables between different cities, and also invite cities to contribute to this. So it's not just a static thing, that other cities can actually contribute to it. So let's say you're teaching a unit on global birth rates, okay? So let's say this is part of your lesson. Let's say you're teaching about population pyramids and how the number of old people versus young people in different countries is not the same because of the birth rate and the death rate and other factors that are important. So let's say as part of that, you had your students examine 3 different cities corresponding to 3 different countries that you're looking at the population pyramid in. So for example, if you had them look at the population pyramid for Ghana, right, it's going to look like this. It's going to be like this, right, with a lot of young people and not very many old people because the birth rate is so high there. Conversely, if you looked at the population pyramid for Tokyo or for Japan, it's going to be more like a rectangle. In other words, the number of older people are going to be about the same as the number of young people because the birth rate is so low there. So then you would say, okay, based on what we just examined, what's your hypothesis for what these cities are going to look like in terms of the number of old people or senior population? So if I change my themes along the left side, see at the top you've got themes, so you're not just stuck with population density as we've been looking at so far. If I scroll down in the themes to, how about senior population? So people, senior population, okay, great. Now the cities that I want, I don't want New York, London, and Tokyo. Remember, one of my population pyramids that I had the students look at is Ghana. And so these are cities and not countries. So you'll have to do a little bit of background work. Okay, where is Ghana and what cities in Ghana might be in this urban observatory tool? So I can go to cities on the sort of right above the 3 maps, and I can pick Accra, which is in Ghana, and I can say, I want Accra to be in panel number 2. So Now I've got New York, Accra, and Tokyo in there. So go ahead and change the themes to senior population and change the cities to New York, Accra, and Tokyo instead of New York, London, and Tokyo. Put Accra in the middle panel or wherever you want. Now, is your hypothesis correct? Do we have fewer seniors in Accra versus Tokyo? Well, it looks like we do. It absolutely looks like we do. We have basically, as you can see here in the metadata below the map, you've got one dot for every X number of people, right? So this is what we call a dot density map. And the value of each dot is roughly halved with each increase in scale. So you math teachers out there, you might find this really valuable to talk about what is a dot density map. It's one dot for every, for example, 3 persons at a neighborhood scale. And then as you zoom out, it's one dot for every 100 people. So it's not individual. And you folks teaching, middle school and elementary, the students might be tempted to think these dots are actually where people live. And you can get across the notion of, no, they're not exactly people. They're a aggregation of people. So was your hypothesis actually correct? Well, it looks like it is. Accra has fewer seniors compared to Tokyo. Tokyo is filled with seniors because, again, the birth rate is low, the immigration rate is low, and so you have a lot of older people. Now, throughout the day, folks, we want to just step back and ask the following questions. What's where? Why is it there? And why should we What's where? Why is it there? And why should we care? Thank you. Gracias. Yep. Thanks, folks. Yeah, what's where? Why is it there? And why should we care? The reason why I bring that up is because oftentimes, you get to this point in the lesson, you know how students oftentimes say, well, why do we have to learn this? When are we ever going to use this, outside the classroom? Why should we care? Well, why should we care if we have different age structures of the population? And we're going to actually be looking at the age structure in Las Cruces and Doña Ana County and Gadsden here later on in the workshop. It's a little preview of coming attractions, so you can bring this down to the local level. So right now, I would say something like encourage your students to think about, well, if you have a lot of old people, a lot of seniors, what kinds of goods and services are you going to plan for your community, as opposed to if you have a lot of young people? So if you've got an older population, are you going to plan a lot of like skateboard parks and stuff like that? And hopefully the students will say, well, no, you're going to have more services and goods for seniors, maybe more golf courses or I don't know, trails or something like that. Whereas if you've got younger people, you're going to have to plan for more schools, right? You're going to have to plan for more services for younger people. Yeah, so it really does impact how we plan cities and how we make sustainable communities and that sort of thing. So learning about the age structure is actually an interesting thing, and it ties to a lot of different subjects: human geography, mathematics, a little bit of economics, right? So, and impact on the environment. Which group tends to impact the environment more? That'd be an interesting discussion to have. Absolutely. So last bit on the Urban Observatory, since it's also tied to, and this will tie into our next activity, folks, real world data that's in real time. Go ahead and scroll down to, how about, oh gosh, there's so many good things in here. Look, you've got current temperatures in here. Oh my goodness, this is so great. So current temperatures, let's go ahead and pull that up. On the left side there, you've got systems and then current temperatures. So I'm just gonna, for the sake of time, I'm going to leave, oh gosh, this is so great. I'm gonna leave the current temperatures, middle map, Accra, look at that, it's in the 80s right now. Okay, so pull up a different tab, and if you're actually teaching this in the classroom and say, okay, where is Accra? It's in the tropics, right? It's only about 15 degrees north latitude, maybe 20. Okay, so it's below, it's near the equator. So it makes sense that it's hot. And if it's in the winter right now, right? This is the northern hemisphere still, but look, it's in the 80s. So what's it going to be like, in June? It may be probably pretty close to what it is now. So it's got that equatorial climate zone, as opposed to New York, as you can see on the left side, is in the 30s right now. Okay, and what if we were to anchor this in a unit on just basic, seasonal change around the world? I'm going to make the last panel be Auckland. Okay, Auckland. So I'm going to pull up changing the cities, and I'm going to scroll over to Auckland, Aukland. Yep, and I'm going to make that the third panel. Okay, so it's the southern hemisphere, right? It's in New Zealand. So you folks teaching elementary school, hey, pull out a globe. I'm all for using the most appropriate tool for the lesson. Pull out a globe and have the students find New Zealand. Okay, southern hemisphere. So right now it's getting pretty close to the winter solstice here in the northern hemisphere, isn't it? In about 2.5 weeks, we'll be at the winter solstice. In the southern hemisphere, they're going to be at the summer solstice in about 2 weeks, right? So New Zealand is in the southern hemisphere. So it's actually it's really late spring there right now, right? It's getting really close to being summer. So compare different seasons and how it's reflected in current temperatures. Ooh. Okay, one last thing, folks. What if you pulled up under movement on the left side? What if you pulled up traffic? Ah. So I'm going to, in the cities now, I'm going to look at traffic in the middle panel. I'm going to pull up, I don't know, Los Angeles, right? Maybe the students have heard, oh, there's a lot of traffic in Los Angeles. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up Los Angeles for the middle panel there. This gets into our time zones lesson in the next section. The Earth is a dynamic planet. Oftentimes I ask students, hey, what happens on Mercury? Well, not much. Not much, right? Every so often, there's a meteorite that hits the surface, but it doesn't have water. It doesn't have humans impacting the landscape. There's not much that happens on Mercury, as opposed to the Earth, right, which is a dynamic planet, lots going on. So Los Angeles right now, there's a lot of stop and go on the highways. So get your students to think about, hey, what time is it in Los Angeles right now? It's 8:37. It's morning rush hour, okay? So you've got a lot of stop and go. Look at Auckland. Hey, everything's flowing pretty well there. Wow, look at the freeways. Look at the fact that Auckland's on this isthmus, right? Get them to think about patterns. Auckland's on this isthmus, so everything has to flow right through the middle of the city because you've got water on both sides. So get them to think about a little bit of physical geography here. Oh, I love this stuff, folks. So, okay, it's flowing pretty well. You've got a lot of green. All good. Good day, mate, in Auckland right now. What time is it in Auckland? So it is 5:38 in the morning on Thursday. Okay, so interesting. So back on the Urban Observatory, if it's 5:38 in the morning, and it's tomorrow, yeah, it's a bit early for people to be out. So if we checked in 2 hours, or depending on the time you teach this lesson, you see what I mean? This is the kind of lesson that it's different depending on what time of day you actually teach it. So you can uncover these patterns and relationships and trends with the Urban Observatory. And there's other things that we're not touching on today. You can look at the difference in parks in different communities. You can look at the difference in where the airports are. Are they near freeways? Are they near bodies of water, et cetera? What about ports? So there's a lot you can do with this Urban Observatory, but it's an example of one web mapping application, and there are many of these on different subjects. So just to get you thinking about that, these maps that we're using today, folks, they're not just what's where, but we're looking at patterns, and hopefully you're starting to see that in the workshop today. Everybody good with that?
Yes.
Sorry,
It's all on the web. Nothing to install, right? You're just pulled up a web browser and you haven't even signed in or logged in. Wow. Cool.
Yes, Dr. K, you can hear us?
Yes.
we have an observation here. Let me give the mic to one of the participants. Yes.
Hi, hello. I was checking here the El Paso versus Mexico City and Los Angeles, and I was really surprised that I was able to focus into what is Mexico, and you can see right away the line on the America's Bridge, one of the port of entries, and it says stop and go, and the line goes like far, 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 far. I was able to do, I think, like 2 hours at the bridge right now.
Ah, mm-hmm.
Okay, so actually the information is really accurate, and it's up to date. And it was I just want to bring this update of like little pitching information here to the audience here. But it's actually really interesting, really interesting.
Yeah, isn't this fascinating? I'm glad you brought that up because with any of these activities today, yeah, bring it to the local level. You know, why is there so much traffic right there, right on the border? Why is it so backed up? And does it change at different times of day? Yeah, fascinating, really is.
Thanks for the remark. Yeah, appreciate it. So folks, I think in addition to what Dr. K is saying, yeah, it's an app that is freely available. So all you have to do is to know where to get it. And then you are here at the workshop so that you are learning how to navigate the app. Once you do that, you're in your classroom with your first graders or high schoolers, customize it to whatever you want to discuss for the day. Okay? Yes, Dr.
So
K,
all I did there, and I'm sure you folks are doing this too, in the left panel or whatever panel you want, I just pulled up El Paso. Mm-hmm. All right, folks, we better